We're ready to jump into our next panel. And this one we've touched upon a little bit already, and it's innovating with AI. And it's really thinking about how we're doing AI. And I know Kevin mentioned AI for good, and there's been a few other mentions of AI as an emerging technology that we need to take advantage of, and how that can be done effectively. So really, in this panel, we're looking at applications of AI in our communities that's doing well and doing good in the communities. And really excited to have Renee Sieber, Ibrahim, El-chami, and Jonathan Brown here with us today. And two of them are remote, so I'm hoping that it's all set up and ready to go. I would like to invite Renee Sieber, who's the co-chair of the Municipal AI Community of Practice, to get us kicked off. Renee, if you're there.
Great. I'm here. Let me just share my screen. Okay, great. So this is really an advertisement for the AI in Canadian Municipalities Community of Practice. We hold a monthly conference call. We're starting our 4th year. We have data scientists and open data people, including Jonathan, who will be speaking as well, who join us every month. The May meeting is May 22nd. Email me if you're interested. It's going to be a report from the World AI Summit that was held last month in Montreal, and it's going to be a report from the state of the art of AI, the scary bits and the exciting bits. So I'm Renee Sieber. I'm at McGill University. My research is on public participation and emergent technologies, primarily in cities. And I also co-host with Bianca Tomazelli, the AI Community of Practice. So I don't need to reiterate why people want to do AI, because they promise a lot, including the optimization of public interactions and labor savings. And presumably the efficiency of service delivery, but that's of course a cost-benefit analysis that you have to do, because there is an upfront cost of whether you're doing data science or AI, whether you're doing machine learning or whether you're doing deep learning. So we've been doing the AI COP for a while, and I'm just going to give you 3 examples that I thought were pretty cool, and you can ask me about any of the others you may have heard about. A lot of these come from the city of Edmonton. This was super cool. So we often think of AI, whether Canada or the US, is very urban. And this is in the city of Edmonton, where they were using feature detection and pattern recognition to handle the millions of camera trap images that they have situated at the periphery of the city. They, like many towns and cities in Canada, they're at the urban-rural fringe. They're not at the urban-suburban fringe always. So they wanted to know if moose were coming into the city, for example. And it was quite an interesting challenge for them to figure out how they found the right training data and trained model, because they weren't really interested in distinguishing a type of animal, but it really was a toggle of, is it wildlife or is it not? Not is it moving or is it not? Because if it's moving, you could pick up people on lawnmowers mowing parks. This next one comes from the city of Montreal, where I live. Montreal benefits from being close to the Quebec Machine Learning Institute. So we have a lot of interns from MILA. This is one such project where they're looking at the use of pattern recognition as well to do feature detection and to both look at traffic congestion, but also to look at impediments to traffic flow, whether that's the ubiquitous construction in Montreal, or whether that is pedestrian or bicycle traffic. And of course, it gets complicated because of snowy conditions and also rainy and dusk and night conditions to do this detection. So it works well in the daytime, but it's a lot more difficult when you have these other conditions, weather in Canada. Here's some IoT for you. So not all the data science, not all the AI in Canada occurs only in big cities. This is from the town of Innisfil, and they're looking at both modernizing their ability to sense environmental effects in the town, but also to report that and do predictive analytics, whether that is the placement of sensors on rubbish bins to detect when they're full, but also to do site selection of where to put new rubbish bins, or to do route optimization for picking up the garbage. And also, for example, soil moisture sensors, this is the lower left, to predict when floods might occur on the roads. Obviously, there are many issues at play. Do not be overwhelmed by the next slide. There's a lot of issues, and one of those issues is whether you do this AI in-house or you outsource it. My former master's student, Sichen Wan, and I did research. We interviewed data scientists across Canada on what it took to start a data shop, what it took to adopt AI. And here are many, many things that she found out, and I will just point out at least one of them. So this is a question about whether or not you want to do AI. Sure, AI is cool, so you want to do AI, but you don't have the capacity. So do you outsource? And there are reasons why you'd want to attempt to keep it in-house regardless. Versus why you'd want to outsource it. And I thought this was super interesting that overall, cities and towns reported that even if you outsourced, you should have at least one data scientist, which means, of course, you need to set aside a part of a municipal budget to hire a data scientist to review requests for proposals and collaborate with internal, external actors, and to monitor the AI. Because one of the great challenges when you outsource is that there's far greater transparency about the inner workings of a system. And of course, you don't want to have to deal with it if a startup goes under. Since a lot of what we're doing is state of the art, is soda or bleeding edge. My research often is about AI ethics, specifically location-based ethics. I'm in the Department of Geography, so I'm very interested in geo AI and geo AI ethics. So I think it's really important to mention that, and I've also written briefs for the federal government, for example, on Bill C-27, which includes the AI in Data and /Digital Act, and also written briefs for the Treasury Board on their new voluntary code of conduct for generative AI. And it's important for municipalities to recognize that responsible AI and AI ethics aren't just an issue for provinces or the feds, that there's a lot of opportunities for AI usage. Let's cut to the chase. Really, it's predictive analytics, it's machine learning like random forests or fancy regressions. whether that's for pothole detection and monitoring or for, say, predictive policing. So it is important for people to understand the need to craft AI policies that are responsible, fair, transparent, accountable. This is a challenge for municipalities that, it's like, oh, I've only got so much money, so I'm going to pay for a data scientist. Where am I going to get the money for a responsible AI policy? To also investigate what the ethical concerns are, which are only getting more pronounced as we start moving to generative AI. And that is it for me.
Thanks, Renee. I had a round of applause here in the room. I'm not sure if you heard it, but thank you so much for your thoughts. Really interesting to think about how AI isn't just for big cities or big centers, and really thinking about municipalities across the country and how they can get involved. Speaking of municipalities getting involved, our next speaker is Ibrahim El-chami, who is the IoT infrastructure architect at the city of Burnaby in BC. So really looking at how another municipality is implementing things like the Internet of Things and experimenting with new ways of using data and AI in the work that they do. So Ibrahim, up to you.
Hey everyone, my name is Ibrahim and I am an IoT infrastructure architect at the city of Burnaby in British Columbia, and I work on aspects of regulation and the applications of AI, IoT and emerging technologies at the city. The city of Burnaby is the third largest city in BC in terms of population. As many Canadian cities, we're seeing unprecedented population growth, and as the city has grown and grows along with it, the demand to maintain a high quality of life and services for the citizens of our city. And central to all of that is the need to continuously upgrade the city's digital infrastructure. So we learn from other cities around the world on what they've done right, what has worked for them, and we add our approach and accommodate all of this into updating our regulations and strategies to accommodate all this new wave of technologies. And okay, it is going faster. Okay. The latest digital infrastructure framework that we have overarches the overall long-term strategy for the city. The framework includes full ownership of the infrastructure and solutions that the city implements. In terms of infrastructure, this includes owning the fiber, the networking cable that goes into the ground, connecting the internet, for example, as well as the towers, the servers, data centers. That's right, the city owns all of this and rents it out to ISPs out there. This allows the city to offer free Wi-Fi to the whole city, for example, and which we are on the way to deliver. It also allows us to bypass relying on cellular companies because we can set up our own private networks, such as LoRaWAN, for example, for our own projects, which covers the whole city. And private networks are essential because they allow us to install sensors and devices all around the city. Examples of those include air quality sensors, traffic controls like we've seen in Montreal, for example, rainwater, drainage, water coming from construction sites and detecting the quality of that. Sensors within buildings, for example, like sensors that go on elevators in HVAC, data centers, water quality in pools. This helps us gain data-driven insight into what's happening around the city and plan well ahead. So the city owns the assets, infrastructure, and the data, and how that data is communicated, and everything we create out of that. So solutions like analytical tools, predictive maintenance, and anomalies in systems, all of that comes from data. All of that comes with data governance and regulation. Okay, it's skipping. Okay. In terms of data governance, we have a comprehensive approach to ensure proper data management in terms of privacy, security, responsible use. I'm not going to go into the details here. This is just to highlight the tech guiding principles that we put together behind our open data and open data portal. There are a lot of there are a lot of access. There's a lot to access on our data portal, and I invite everyone to have a quick look at some of the tools that we offer there. From the previous slide, the rationale as to why we provide open data and through the portal is essentially as we implement selectively open data approach is primarily to having a transparent level of engagement with the citizens, allowing various avenues for increased public engagement, all of which inherently leads to building trust with the public. And I want to finally segue into responsible AI use in municipalities in BC. This is a brief copy paste from our tech guiding principles again. This is to kind of touch on the subject, as others may have already mentioned. For us at the City of Burnaby, we are creating awareness around responsible use of the technology, and we are actively trying to implement a ground-up approach, as Renee has just mentioned. There needs to be a ground-up approach. It cannot be only federal, provincial, then municipalities. There needs to be a bi-directional approach. So we are actively implementing approaches that would potentially lead to proper and comprehensive regulation, at least in BC.
That's great. Thank you, Ibrahim. I'm sure we can circulate some contact details for you. Really appreciate that. We'll give her a round of applause in the room. So from the West Coast to the near coast, we're excited to have Jonathan Brown, who's the GIS coordinator at Sustainable Coburg, here to chat with some of the work that they're doing on AI and data. Thanks, Jonathan.
In a nutshell, we're just imagining. We can't afford AI. So, slides. This one? Oops. Well, I can go here, yeah. So thanks. This has been a great conference. I've been taking lots of notes, so I'm going to have to keep myself succinct. I'm not known for that. So I'm going to talk briefly about a digital twin. How many have met their digital twin? Hands up. One. One here has met. Two? Two. We got two. Are we going for three? Two. Out of this audience of IT people, we have only two that have met their digital twin. What is a digital twin? How many? Hands up. Digital twin. Wow. This is scary. Well, it might be an opportunity. So I'm going to talk briefly about the digital twin, and I'm going to talk about it in the context of another big need, which is the housing labor gap. And I don't know if you read the Sunday Star last night, but last Sunday, it had a large article talking about the 3 levels of government, to Ibrahim's point, and how to solve the labor shortage to build the housing that we need to accommodate the people that are moving into our urban centers. So, where did I put that? Here. Whoops. I'm going to skip that one and go right to this one. How do I play this? Whoops. So the issue is, will AI replace or enhance? And if you look at these two images, you can see that the top image have that individual, Alex, let's call him Alex, has discovered his digital twin. And he's not picking his nose. So how do I go back? There. This here is a simulation of the City of Toronto's digital twin. How many have seen this? MetaWorld X is a startup out of Markham, Ontario. So this is a success story in the making of a digital twin company. And if I can play this, let's see, how do I do this? Upstairs? Nathan, can you play this video? Looks like it's coming. So as this is coming up, this is a YouTube. Yep, here we go. And this company had 10 contracts with the Director of Economics for the City of Toronto, and then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, the director retired, and those 10 contracts never came to fruition. So what he did, Raza, is he ended up having a contract with the Line project out of Saudi Arabia. Back then, the Line project was hot in the market. I don't think it is today. That's another story. And so what he's doing now, he calls it the Robin Hood model. So he's getting big contracts from Saudi Arabia, and then he learns from that technology that has been applied in that project, and he brings it back here and he sells it at a reasonable price to municipalities. But the challenge is in getting the labor force that's going to build this Internet of Things infrastructure to make these digital twins come alive with real-time and near real-time data and all of the digital analytics and all those data scientists that are going to have to be employed in order to monitor the performance of this digital twin. And in a nutshell, a digital twin is the reflection of the physical infrastructure. So just think of the buildings and not just the built assets, but also the natural assets. So one of the things we focus on with smart buildings is BIM, building information modeling, and using real-time data to not only build them at a distance, so the architects then can visit with the workers, and the workers walk through the building with augmented reality, and then they're able to have a conversation on, okay, so what do we need to do to adapt this building to the extreme weather events and the changing microclimates that are hitting our communities? Here we go, we're gonna get it. So this is the utopia. MetaWorld X out of Markham, Ontario. And what you're seeing there is all of the data that's being collected, not just from a surface level, but under the ground. So just think of all of the old infrastructure in downtown Toronto that is on the verge of collapsing. They put sensors down there, and I'm going to talk to you about the real innovators, the ones that are down in those sewers in a minute. But the idea here is that you have the real-time weather, you have the data that's being sorry about this. But you get the idea. This is the metaverse, but it is based on synthetic, but real data coming from the City of Toronto. So earlier on, we were talking about harvesting the data. And one of the challenges will be to monitor where that data goes and who's using it. It's not about creative problem solving for this young group of students over here. It's who can use this data to establish what the problem is that's going to be solved. Those will be the power brokers. And if AI is able to act like a consultant who can then define the problem rather than going in and telling the municipal staff what they already know and they want to hear, then that group is going to have the most power. And if you realized this statement from Putin, Putin said way back, whoever controls AI controls the world economy. He's not doing such a great job now, but he saw that. And China's in the same boat. We are in a global competition between major trading partners, Europe, China and Russia, and also North America. And one of the things that we have to realize here in Canada is that we're not shaping the global economy, the regulations that are going to govern the way that this data is used and the way that these digital twins are going to perform. How many have heard of the Brussels effect? No? So the Brussels effect, you know the Brussels, the bureaucrats that create all the red tape. They also are the ones that set the regulatory framework for AI. And they also set it for the general data protection on individual rights. And they had to change that latter regulation to accommodate the AI regulation. The big companies then will say, well, we'll just take that as the global standard. So they set the standard for all the other jurisdictions. So if your regulation is not up to that standard, then you're not going to be playing in the global economy. Whatever you're doing, you won't be playing in that economy. So how does that impact the labor market? And you can see the utopia would be the enhanced version there. And 4-day work week. 4-day work week, increase in productivity. That's the utopia. But how do you get there? So the good news here, which I skipped right over. So the good news is that the projected population growth for the city of Toronto is 3.3 million people by 2045. And how many residents is that? 1.32 million residences. I talked to an architect in Toronto. He said, Jonathan, that's the equivalent of 25-story buildings, 100 of them each year being built in downtown Toronto until 2045. That's not going to happen. So that gives us the bad news. So the catch-22, since we've heard a lot about paradoxes today, is how do you have an increase in the population, because that does generate growth, and how do you build homes to accommodate that income influx? Canada's population is growing. We had 1 million immigrants last year, and that's not sustainable because we don't have the housing for that. Our demographics, we're aging out. Most of the developed countries are. China has a huge issue with aging population. So that's the other big challenge we have to look at. Now let's see if I get this right. I want to give you the real solution. Here we go. This group is amazing. When we did a conference in May about digital twins for 80 students from our local high school, I had Ian Braisworth. Ian Braisworth is a graduate of Centennial, an engineering technician. And he went directly to the field, City of Toronto's field innovation team. And he was amazing because he is in the sewers, and look what he's doing down there. Next slide. I think it's controlled upstairs. So what this picture is, it's a 360 photo. And I call it the canary in the storm sewer, because he is in the storm sewers, and they have combined sewers in Toronto and downtown Toronto. And they're building massive bypass pipes, but not enough to accommodate the need. So this is innovation. That whole unit there cost $1,300. And then he was able to put it down into the sewer in order to get that information. They worked with VGIS and a photogrammetry surveying company in Toronto to create augmented reality so that when the operators are out in the field and all the manholes are covered, they're able to identify where they are. And they're also able to identify where there's a backup and how to deal with allocating the workflow for fixing those problems. And you might wonder, well, could digital twins, okay, Jonathan's just, we know nobody knows what digital twin is, but you can sign up right there, Mohawk College, and you can earn a micro-credential. You don't even have to leave your job. Get your company to pay for your micro-credential, something the federal government is doing through Quick Train Canada. But 43 million to Quick Train Canada is not going to address the issue. Lifelong learning might help. And if you're a lifelong learner, I would suggest signing up for Mohawk College's Fundamentals of Digital Twins. Next slide. So let's bring it all home. Here we have a picture of a crane. Toronto has the highest crane rate in North America. It's like 20 times larger than the next biggest city in North America. Cranes are building, we're building, we're building. And I'm going to leave it on this little joke. I like using Copilot for jokes, and this is generated by Copilot. Why did the AI digital twin start a recruitment agency? Because it had too many virtual positions and not enough real people to fill them. So, and I think we're open for questions.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. Appreciate that. If you could just grab a seat right there, that's great. Thank you very much. Those are some really enlightening talks that outlined some of the future potential that we have in this space. A lot of the exciting things that are happening, but even more importantly, things that could be happening in the future. So we'll open it up for some questions. I don't know if anyone has any in the audience right now, but I'm happy to start because I have one myself. And it's really thinking about, back to your joke about virtual positions and recruiting. How do we ensure that we have the capacity in our public service to be able to do the kind of work that we want to? I know, Renee, you mentioned that you need at least one data scientist on the team, even if you're outsourcing. And Ibrahim, obviously, you've got a whole team of people working on these kinds of things. If, as Jonathan mentioned, AI is about to be a consultant to the public service, how do we staff up the public service and make sure that we have the right capacity and skill sets in the room to do this? And I wonder if we could start with Renee on that one.
It's a great question. It's a hard question. I think it's important to, I often talk about an algorithm stack and how AI is built on top of AI, especially generative AI. There's also a literacy and training stack. So I think what's important is to identify the correct entry level for literacy of the public service. Part of that literacy should also include educating your elected officials. So that's an added complication, but I don't think the literacy begins at the fundamentals of machine learning and throwing a lot of math at people. Because one of the advantages of these tools, particularly as they move into software libraries that hopefully have a nice UI on top of them, because that's never assured, is that it really is about understanding the hooks to be able to do this and to establish best practices for some of the pitfalls, and also, which include like, what evaluation tools do you use to know whether or not you're getting too many false positives, for example? And sometimes false positives and false negatives are not the best metric to understand the utility of something. It's a lot of the stuff that's going on in Canada is RFP based, and it really, really is important to understand the pitfalls and the obligations, not the least of which, of course, is sensitivity and confidentiality of data. But I think really it is creating some kind of co-training where you don't hand off all responsibility to the vendor, but you're being trained alongside on the internals. And it's, a big problem with this stuff. I mean, I go on and on about it because of its sheer opacity compared to other software. Sure, other software is large, and we don't have to be reminded of systems like Phoenix. I mean, it could be millions of lines of code. However, there are intrinsic opacities to this stuff. So your ability to at least understand what's going on is super important, not for you to like, oh, you got to go back to school and learn math.
Yeah, great point.
It should be on now. Yeah, there you go.
Am I on? Oh, yeah, there we go. So here's my story. My life story is that I started out as an educator. They wouldn't let me into a regular classroom, so I taught alternative adult education. Then when our boards amalgamated, they said, well, what do we do with this guy? We'll put him into distributed learning because we're just getting into that technology. Then we had a $6 million deficit. So I'd gone through the Ray days where we were on strike. So I had Plan B in place. So Plan B was go to the Information Management Branch of the Ministry of Education and say, look, I had $500,000 for Industry Canada to put out the internet into all these rural schools. They're telling me I have to go back to the classroom. I could have paid for my salary for that. No. So they hired me and they said, oh, we're amalgamating 8 databases and doing a web thing for Student Information Management System. We're rolling out the Ontario Education Number. Would you like to be the project lead for that? I know nothing about data. But I said, what you're offering me is better what my school board is. And they said, by the way, could you work from home? We'll buy you a computer, we'll buy you a telephone line, and we will give you a opportunity to work from home and pay to bring you into Toronto. That's how it started in 2000. 17 years later, when I retired, I was not working from home. I was working with the union to advocate for flexible work arrangements. And then I retired and COVID hit. And guess what? My manager now works further from Toronto than I did. And she was the one fighting me on flexible work arrangements. So where I'm going with this is to answer the question about what should we do with the municipalities. They have no capacity. They do need to bring their staff who have a passion project, not do it at the side of their desk, use the community as a living lab. And I think that's what Commutech is trying to do, right? Is bring them in here, but connect it out into the infrastructure that's being managed on a daily basis. And make those the co-op placements where you're going to put your students. And do the hackathon problem solving as part of the operational maintenance, just like Ian Braisworth is doing for the City of Toronto. But that's a hidden secret. He's not something that's been discovered by Mayor Chow to be able to build all this building. But he is the solution. He and his team are the solution. The canaries in the mine are the ones that we need. And we're not getting enough of those people coming out of our systems because the systems are so blocked with barriers and they don't know how to build for the future. And you need to also create a space within those big organizations. We don't need more chairs on the deck. We need trim tabs on the rudder, the big rudder. And you know how that works, right? The trim tab goes the opposite direction to create that physical vacuum so that the big rudder can turn. That's Buckminster Fully. We need more of that. And how you get there is the challenge of the next generation, building on the experience of the barriers built by this generation. I'm pointing at myself.
Thank you. Ibrahim, I wanted to ask you, since you're working in the municipality, how you guys are building that capacity, and particularly around some of the stuff that you said around data governance and ethics in AI. How do you build that capacity where you are and really explore the areas of ethics in AI?
Yeah, so we have a parallel approach. Just because we cannot hire a data scientist per department, for example, or per team within that department. So what we're trying to do is we have an initiative, a training initiative within IT to help every single department to tell us exactly what they're missing. And we will try to come up with courses, solutions internally to try to get you up to the basic knowledge needed for you to start taking on understanding what the vendor means when they bid on an RFP. In parallel to that, we have we started this recently, establishing working sessions with the individual departments, try to understand exactly what they're looking for, and if they cannot if they don't know what their data capacity is or what their data needs are, we can complement that essentially at in a centralized approach. So when vendors bid on an RFP where the project manager is not particularly tech savvy, for example, someone including myself, for example, would go help with that RFP process, and we would help level the field in such a way that we have a domain expert who is the actual technical, the PM on that project, and a technical complementary, so that we have that domain expertise covered as well. So that's what we're trying to do. Some cities with larger departments, with larger capabilities to hire people, they are hiring individual data scientists per team, per department. For example, City of Vancouver, they have hired, I think, 2 or 3 data scientists for their routing fleet team. So essentially, garbage waste management trucks, when they pick up the garbage, sort of thing, they've tried to move all of that into a digitized approach and try to optimize the routes. And because they're collecting a lot of data, they've hired a data scientists specifically for that department. So there are a lot of different approaches that are happening. and at the end of the day, it's what works for individual teams and what works for individual cities.
Ibrahim, are you familiar with BC's Challenge Prize?
No, I will.
So when the bureaucrat writing the RFP doesn't know what they don't know,
Yeah.
they put out a challenge series, right? They'll say, here's my problem, and here's the funding I have for it. And they do these rounds, and they'll go through it. And then what they end up doing is not going to the vendor of record, but they bring in entrepreneurs like from Commutech and others, innovation hubs, and then they iterate through that. And by the time they're ready to go, they can write up the RFP because they know what needs to go in the deliverables. And then they've brought new blood into that ecosystem that'll be bidding on it. BC is a leader.
I'll definitely look more into that, and I'll get your help on that. We'll have a separate discussion as well as on the digital twins.
Yeah, tomorrow at the hackathon, you're going to be mentoring.
Yeah, sounds good.
I'm glad that this conversation is happening. Sadly, we are out of time, so I will have to wrap it up. I just want to give another round of applause to our panel, Renee, Ibrahim, and Jonathan. Thank you so much for those insights.